The Breakfast Club. Jimmy be popping all that bullshit. I be seeing you, Jimmy talking about we Gucci boo boo. He in the Gucci store talking about we Gucci boo boo. Black King they was going you up, Jimmy. They was like, Marita Moneda, Coca-Cola, Pedro.
It be money in case they wanted to know. Tell them we Gucci. we Gucci. Of my position. Cam is my partner. I'm not his artist. I was the CEO of Diplomats. I made Diplomats with him. I was with him for every bit of his journey.
This is Jim Jones, the self-proclaimed Harlem hustler who never misses a chance to remind everyone just how legendary he is. Depending on which interview you catch, Jim paints himself as a man with endless achievements. The one who built empires, created hits, and taught the whole game how to move. He's bragged about being the genius behind love and hip-hop, claiming his catalog outshines his peers, and that he's the muscle, the brain, and the mentor all rolled into one. But if you talk to the people who actually came up with him, you'll hear a totally different story. Industry insiders, even folks from his own circle, have been quietly, and sometimes loudly, saying Jim's been running with the same exaggerated tales for nearly 20 years straight. Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin have always pushed the same storyline, that love and hip-hop was Jim's brainchild, his baby, his big idea. They said the show was built around their relationship, and Jim swore up and down that he came up with the entire concept himself. But when you actually look at the receipts, things don't line up at all. See, the truth hits different when you check what's official. Mona Scott Young is the one legally credited as the creator and executive producer, not Jim. Her name's right there on the paperwork, in the trade reports, and plastered across every single episode's credits. Jim and Chrissy? They were just cast members, part of the on-screen drama, not the masterminds behind it. Maybe Jim tossed out a few casual ideas, but let's keep it real. Throwing out suggestions isn't the same as building one of the most successful reality TV franchises of the 2010s. So when Jim claims he created love and hip-hop while his name isn't even on the credits, that's not confidence. That's straight up delusion. And it doesn't stop there. Jim's been selling the image of being Harlem's finest, Harlem's own, the one who is Harlem. But that story starts crumbling fast the second Cam'ron opens his mouth. Their relationship, rocky for years. Makeups, fallouts, public shade, and messy reunions, the cycle never ends. One big reason behind the tension, Jim once claimed he made Dipset, and Cam'ron wasn't having it. That's when Cam started peeling back the layers and exposing the truth about Jim's past, and it got ugly. Cam'ron straight up said Jim wasn't really from Harlem like that. He was from the Bronx. His only Harlem tie came through his grandmother, who lived there. Meaning, Jim would just visit sometimes, not grow up there. Cam made it clear they didn't grow up together. So all those stories Jim tells about being raised in Harlem side by side with Cam, according to Cam, none of that ever happened. Cam even broke down how Jim really got close to the crew. Back then, Cam, Mace, Big L, Bloodshed, and Herb McGruff already had the streets on fire. Their freestyles had the whole city watching. Jim, hearing that heat, wanted in bad. After his grandmother passed, he started opening up his house for Cam and the crew, letting them chill there, trying to build that connection. Cam admitted they sometimes stopped by Jim's spot to relax, bring some girls through, or just kick it. But he made one thing crystal clear. They didn't need Jim's place, and he was never part of that tight inner circle. So when you strip away the stories and look at what's real, Jim's Harlem boss image starts to look more like a role he's been playing for years. He wasn't really one of them. More like a fan hanging around the edges, trying hard to get in the circle. Always showing up, always hoping to be part of the crew. And if that wasn't already embarrassing enough, Cam dropped another bomb. He reminded everyone that it was actually Mace who taught Jim how to rap. Yeah, you heard that right. Jim wasn't there in the beginning spitting bars with the Harlem legends. He jumped in later when things were already hot and moving. He wasn't part of Harlem's core from the start. He slid in once the wave was already rolling. And when he finally got a little shine, he tried flexing his money on Cam one time. But that move backfired bad. It left him looking embarrassed all over again. Then came Jim's latest headline grabber, the claim that had the whole hip-hop world talking. He really went on record saying he's a better rapper than Nas. Yes, Nas! He claimed he could rap circles around anybody from his era and even dared hip-hop legends to meet him in the booth. Sure, competition's always been part of the game, but this one wasn't about friendly rivalry. It was about reality. Because we're not talking about just any rapper here. This is Nasir Jones, the man with a Grammy, multiple classic albums, and a rep as one of the greatest lyricists ever. Nas got honored at the 2024 Grandmaster Awards for a reason.
What I did for Nas probably never been done for him in his life. He's never been that viral at all, ever. Ever. He's never been talked about like this ever in his life. I got 100 on me now. I got like 40, 50 on me.
Yeah, that's strong.
That's right. You can come get this right now. Right now. Anyone who right now. And it ain't a money thing, but this is here. You heard? If you want to get busy, is the money on the line. Any one of y'all from my era.
So when Jim said that, the backlash came fast. People couldn't believe it. Then Jim tried to backtrack, saying he wasn't just talking about bars, he meant he's a marketing genius too. Now he's switching the narrative, like, which is it, Jim? Are you calling out legends to battle in the booth or just saying wild stuff to stay trending? He even doubled down saying, pull up Nas Billboard entries and pull up mine. But once people did just that, oof, the receipts didn't help him. Jim's got 9 Billboard 200 entries total, only 3 hitting the top 10, and 0 number ones. Meanwhile, Nas, he's sitting on 27 Billboard 200 entries, 16 top 10s, and 6 number 1 albums. That's a massive gap, and no amount of talking can close it. And just when it couldn't get worse, Harlem chimed in. People on the streets got asked straight up, who's the better rapper, Nas or Jim Jones? And the answers came with laughter. Every single person picked Nas without hesitation. Some didn't even answer with words. They just laughed at the idea of Jim even being in the same sentence as Nas. Even Math Hoffa ran the same poll on his show, and again, total wipeout. Nas took every single vote, no debate, no split decision, nothing. Then came the Jay-Z chapter in Jim's story. For years, Jim tried to act like things were all good with Hov. Around 2016, he was on camera talking about how everything was cool between him and Roc Nation. No beef, no issues. But later interviews told a whole different story. Jim finally admitted he actually felt hurt, like Jay had left him out of the big Roc Nation business moves. The partnerships, the deals, the big plays. He went from calling Jay my brother to admitting he felt snubbed and disrespected. Even Jay threw subtle shade his way, and fans caught it quick. That flip-flop energy didn't go unnoticed. Hip-hop blogs and fans started calling Jim out, saying his stories kept changing every few months. Like his memory couldn't keep up with his own version of events. And then there's the wildest part, the whole Bloods image Jim's been pushing for years. He's always painted himself as a top-ranking general, the one calling shots, giving orders, and running Harlem like a boss. But when the 6ix9ine federal case hit and those 9 Trey wiretaps dropped, things got real ugly. Jim's name came up right there on the wiretaps. You can literally hear him talking gang business on tape. But when the indictments started flying and people were getting locked up left and right, Jim's name, nowhere to be found. No charges, no arrest, nothing. That raised serious eyebrows. Legal experts, hip-hop commentators, even defense lawyers started asking the same question. If Jim was really the big boss he claims to be, the general giving orders, then how come he's the only one who walked away clean? If the feds had enough to bury the 9 Trey leaders for decades, how did Jim Jones walk away untouched? That question still echoes through hip-hop circles. People couldn't understand it. How every so-called soldier and general got hit with indictments, but the man who called himself the big homie somehow slipped through clean? It didn't make sense. Fans started whispering. Insiders started hinting. Maybe there was a reason he wasn't sitting behind bars. And whatever that reason was, it sure didn't match the image he'd been selling for years. And it wasn't just New York where Jim was flexing that gang credibility. Out west, he tried to act like he was fully tapped in with the LA sets, saying he had the green light to move through any hood anytime. But then came Wack 100. And you know Wack never stays quiet when it's time to expose somebody. He came forward claiming the truth was totally different. According to Wack, Jim didn't earn that respect. He paid for it. He allegedly offered Wack money just to get a pass in Compton so he could move around safely without issues. Not long after that story hit, Jim hopped on Instagram, posting videos of himself hanging out in Compton parks, shaking hands, showing love like everything was solid. But people who knew the real story, they said it looked staged, like a full-on performance instead of real street respect. Even actor Faison Love jumped in and started clowning Jim, saying the closest he's ever been to a real blood set was watching the movie Colors. That comment spread fast. Fans were laughing, reposting, and turning Jim's street boss image into another internet punchline. And then came Jim's so-called athlete era, which might honestly be even wilder than his gang stories. He's always in the gym, posting those shadowboxing clips, trying to look like a real fighter. But instead of hyping him up, the internet torched him. Twitter lit up with jokes about his slow punches, awkward footwork, and noodle arms. Memes popped up everywhere, people zooming in on his chicken legs and soft swings, turning every clip into a viral joke. Even other rappers joined in on the roasting. The comment sections were brutal. What Jim meant as a power move turned into another meme attached to his name. But the fake flexes weren't the only thing haunting him. His beefs have been just as messy. These weren't classic rap rivalries like Nas and Jay-Z. These were chaotic, cringe-worthy moments he probably wishes never happened. Take his situation with Raw Diggs, for example. Raw wasn't some internet gangster pretending for clicks, he was the real deal. His criminal record read like something out of a crime documentary: drugs, armed robberies, and multiple murders tied to his name. When the feds finally caught him, they made sure he'd never see daylight again. 3 life sentences plus 105 years. That's how serious his reputation was. So when Jim Jones crossed paths with someone like Raw Diggs, it was a dangerous mix from the jump. See, Raw had been trying to switch lanes into music, recording tracks, linking with artists like Shooter 93, and slowly building buzz in the underground. One day, he ended up in the same studio where Jim was recording, and that's where things took a wild turn. Jim's always had one strict rule in his studio: no street talk, no gang politics. He keeps music life and street life separate. But that day, Raw came in heavy, dropping blood lingo, talking old gang stories, bringing that energy right into the booth. Most people in the room brushed it off as typical tough talk, but Jim wasn't having it. Witnesses say Jim suddenly snapped, yelling, "Man, get the hell out of here with that blood talk!" At first, Raw was stunned. This was Raw Diggs, a man feared in the streets, a dude with real weight behind his name. He couldn't believe Jim had just talked to him like that, so he checked him right back, asking if Jim really meant what he said, and Jim doubled down. He repeated himself loud and clear, dismissing Raw right there in front of everybody. That's when the whole room's energy flipped, fast. The tension got thick, voices started rising, and in a matter of seconds, it went from studio session to near explosion. Words started flying, and what happened next? Well, that's when things really started to spiral out of control. The shouting got wild, voices bouncing off the studio walls, tension so thick you could almost taste it. Everyone there said it felt like the air got sucked right out of the room. It was seconds away from turning deadly. Luckily, a few quick thinkers jumped in before it exploded.
Never happened.
You are a guardian angel and designer. What the fuck is you talking about, man? You are from the Bronx, bro. You are not from Harlem. Why do you keep thinking that you are from Harlem, bro? You are not from Harlem. I did not grow up with you, man. I did not grow up with you.
Some of the guys in the studio threw themselves between Jim and Raw, stopping it before it turned physical. But Raw wasn't about to just swallow his pride and walk off quietly. On his way out, he let that rage take over, smashed one of the studio's glass doors clean out, and stormed off without even looking back. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Not even close. Later that same night, Jim had a show booked at S.O.'s Rendezvous, a spot everybody in the city knew. The crowd was lit, the music banging, and Jim was on stage doing his thing, feeling himself. Then suddenly, boom, Raw Diggs walked in. And he didn't come solo. He rolled in deep with his crew, making sure everybody in the building knew exactly who just showed up. The DJ spotted him and snatched the mic, yelling, "Raw Diggs in the building!" Like a king had just entered the throne room. Instantly, the whole vibe flipped. Witnesses said Jim's whole expression changed in a heartbeat. 1 minute, confident and grinning. The next, pale like he'd just seen a ghost. That fearless energy, gone. He didn't wait around to see what Raw was plotting. He got out of there fast, slipped out the back before anything could pop off. And lucky for Jim, nothing went down in public that night. But behind the scenes, it was way more serious than people realized. Word around Harlem was that one of Raw's guys was literally waiting for a signal, just one nod, to take things to the next level. If Raw had given that green light, That night could have ended in chaos, maybe even worse, but Raw held back. No order was given. And that's the only reason Jim walked out untouched. For someone like Raw Diggs, that was shocking. This was a man feared across the East Coast for never letting disrespect slide. The type to handle things with his fists or worse. So why'd Jim get a pass? People close to the situation have their theories. Some say after that studio blow-up, Jim finally learned who he was really dealing with. Maybe somebody pulled him aside and broke it down. Raw's background, his charges, his reputation, his whole resume in the streets. If Jim didn't know before, he definitely knew after that night. And then there's Max B. Out of all Jim Jones's beefs, this one hits the deepest. It's personal, bitter, and soaked in betrayal. What makes it sting so bad is that they used to be tight, real tight. Max wasn't just another rapper in Jim's crew, he was his ghostwriter, his right hand in the studio, and one of the key forces behind Jim's Bird Gang movement. For a minute, they moved like brothers, making music, chasing hits, and building something special. But when things fell apart, they didn't just crack, they collapsed. The real fallout came when Max caught that serious case, a murder charge that ended with him doing major time. From Max's point of view, Jim left him hanging when things got dark. He felt betrayed, like Jim abandoned him right when loyalty was supposed to count the most. That's when everything flipped. The friendship, the music, the respect, all gone. What followed turned into one of New York's nastiest, most bitter rap feuds ever. Max didn't hold anything back. He went scorched earth. He dropped a mixtape with a cover showing tombstones, and one of them read, "Here lies Millie Jim Jones." Then came the now infamous diss track, "She Touched It in Miami," where Max claimed he hooked up with Jim's longtime partner, Chrissy Lampkin. That record didn't just stir drama, it blew up the internet. Fans couldn't believe it, and the industry started picking sides. What used to be brotherhood had turned into full-on war, and the wounds from that beef still haven't healed. That track blew up the streets. Taking shots at Jim was one thing, but dragging Chrissy Lampkin into it, that made it personal, and everything changed after that. The beef went from words to real-life chaos. According to Max, one night he spotted Jim out in the streets, and that's when things got wild. He said Jim tried to box his car in like he was setting him up for a confrontation, but Max wasn't about to get cornered. He claimed he rammed his car straight into Jim's Bentley just to break free. And in the middle of it all, he socked Jim right in the face. That moment became street legend, the day Max B stood toe-to-toe with the so-called Capo of Harlem. Even while locked up doing a long stretch, Max never let that beef completely eat him alive. Over time, he started hinting that he was ready to move past it, even saying he'd squash things if the opportunity came up. But Jim, he's always acted like none of it ever mattered. In interviews, he plays it cool, brushing off Max's name like he barely remembers him, pretending the whole thing was just a blur. He's treated that chapter like a tiny footnote in his career, but the truth always has a way of creeping back. In a recent interview, Jim finally admitted he did Max dirty, and that little confession flipped the whole narrative. Fans had suspected it for years, and now they finally had confirmation straight from Jim's own mouth. And then there's 50 Cent. His name pops up in almost every rap feud, but when it comes to Jim Jones, that tension runs deep. Their issues go all the way back to 2007, when Dipset was already falling apart. Cam'ron and Jim were clashing heavy. The crew wasn't tight, and 50, being the ultimate instigator, saw the perfect opening. He invited Jim to perform at one of his shows right in the middle of that Dipset chaos, and it wasn't some friendly gesture either. Years later, 50 admitted the whole thing was strategic. It was chess, not unity. He wanted to stir the pot, expose the cracks in Dipset, and laugh while Jim unknowingly played right into it. Eventually, Jim fired back during an interview with Justin LeBoy, trying to flip the script by calling out both 50 and Cam'ron at once. He said, "Both of them pause though. Get off my..." Yeah, there's only space on there for baby girl, man. But come on, we all know 50 wasn't letting that slide. He did what 50 always does, took it further, turned it from music talk into street gossip. When 6ix9ine's federal trial was going down, 50 pulled up actual court transcripts where Jim's name appeared under Individual 1. He didn't flat out say it, but he didn't have to. he heavily implied Jim might have been playing both sides, maybe even cooperating. That move sent shockwaves through the culture. In hip-hop, there's nothing worse than being labeled an informant, and suddenly, people were looking at Jim sideways. That one stunt from 50 planted serious doubt in people's minds, and once he lit that flame, the internet ran wild with it. 50 kept pressing the issue, clowning Jim on Instagram, cracking jokes every time his name came up. So when fans started talking about a possible versus battle between the two, Jim shut that talk down quick. His response was cold and sharp. "I don't want to do nothing with that sucker." But that wasn't the end. Next came True Life. And unlike the other beefs, this one wasn't about rap or clout. It was real. It had street-level consequences, and it turned into one of the darkest chapters in Jim's entire career. At first, Jim and True Life weren't enemies. In fact, they were cool. True Life, along with JoJo Capone, actually provided protection for Jim and Dipset whenever things got heated in New York. They were risking it all, standing in the trenches, keeping the crew safe when situations could have easily turned violent. But over time, True Life and JoJo started feeling disrespected, like they were putting in all that work without getting the proper love or compensation. From their side, they were risking everything, while Jim wasn't showing enough appreciation or loyalty in return. That's when things blew up. True Life ended up snatching Jim's Bird Gang chain, and instead of keeping it on the low, he turned it into a public humiliation. He showed it off in interviews like a trophy, laughing, flaunting it, making it clear for the world to see Jim Jones wasn't who he claimed to be. In the street world, that kind of disrespect hits deep. It's not about the jewelry, it's about respect, power, and credibility. Watching True Life parade around with that chain crushed Jim's image, especially when fans were already doubting his authenticity. Jim tried to do damage control by going on Hot 97 to tell his side of the story, but instead of fixing things, it only made the situation worse. The more he talked, the more people started to see through the act, and by that point, his Harlem boss persona was already hanging by a thread. True Life felt even more disrespected after hearing the way Jim was talking, and from that point on, things just got darker and deeper. That tension wasn't just rap beef anymore. It was personal, raw, and dangerous. The bad blood between Jim and True Life could have easily turned into something catastrophic. The kind of street situation nobody walks away from clean. The only reason it ever cooled down was because True Life got locked up on an unrelated case. Prison hit pause on the situation. But the memory of it, that never really faded. To this day, Jim barely speaks on it, probably because it's one of those L's that never washes off, no matter how much time passes. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, it's wild. How many hits has Jim taken over the years? From public fallouts and fake flexes to messy feuds and lies people keep catching him in, the drama just never ends. Wherever he goes, chaos is right there with him, like a shadow he can't escape. The truth is, the industry doesn't really see Jim as a legend anymore. They see him as a walking headline. A man who built his own image only for it to flip back on him in the worst way. Instead of respect, more and more people just clown him for the madness that always surrounds his name. If you made it this far, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. There's plenty more wild truth coming your way, and trust, you don't want to miss what's next.